So this is just another little Excel tutorial going over some of the ways that you can use formulas in Excel. This is certainly by no means comprehensive. There are plenty of other functions that I'm not going to go into. So if you have any questions about those specifically, let me know in class or shoot me an email and I can try and make another tutorial. But in this tutorial I'm going to go through addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and some of the other basic functions that you're going to need to use in order to make a cute spreadsheet. So first, this is a spreadsheet that one of my students last year made. I would consider it to be a highly cute spreadsheet. So let's take a look here. So these numbers here, if we look up in the formula bar here, are just numbers that she entered, right? So the molar mass, that's something I can enter. The mass that I measured is something that I can just put in there. Now she's calculated the number of moles, which we know is going to be the grams divided by the molar mass, by taking C4, which corresponds to the blue here, and this is the division symbol, backslash, and then dividing it by D4, the green, here. If we press enter, that formula has been entered here. So now we have the number of moles. Now she's also been careful to make sure that she, if we right click here, has the correct number of decimal places to keep the significant figures correct all the way through. So she has 5 here, she has 5 here, and she has 5 significant figures here. So make sure that you do that. Now I could easily go through and write the same formula again for this one, but I don't actually need to. And here's why. This little black plus sign that you see when I come into the corner here, if I click and drag it down, it will give me the same formula in here. So let's take a look what happens when I disappear this one. I click and I drag it, I click and I drag it down, and the number reappears. And I have this formula in the top one, and in the bottom one I have this formula. So that's a really useful little tool when you have to do the same calculation numerous times. You don't need to actually do the calculation, you can just have Excel do it for you. Now here for the total, one of the other calculations that we can use is anytime we want to put a formula in, we're going to start it off with equals, and we're going to put SUM, sum, and we're going to put parentheses. And once you see the parentheses, you can see here that the sum is a function because it's in blue. And it's going to tell you exactly the kind of input that it wants. So in this case, it wants number, comma, another number, comma, number, 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 etc. And ad infinitum. Not literally, but you get the idea. So once I've got the first parentheses, I'm going to go ahead and enter in these two and end parentheses, and then press enter. Now I have the sum of my total moles. So you can see that this sum, reflected in this number here, has already been set up to automatically have the same number of significant figures as the other two. You may have to adjust it for the sum depending on what these numbers are, but just remember, correct significant figures forever for the rest of your life. Now, some of you might notice that there was not a number here until I put this summation here, and that is because this formula is using this quantity and this quantity. And we realize that if the blue guy, F6, is 0 and it's divided by 0.5, that it can't be anything, right? So let's see what happens when I delete that total again. Now pay attention. See, it goes to 0, right? Because 0 divided by something is 0. So we'll go up to Edit, Undo Typing, And now we have our formula back, so that's always a handy one. Don't ever forget, undo typing will save your life if you accidentally mess up your spreadsheet. And so she's able to do all of her calculations in here and set the correct significant figures. So, moving on. This is a set of dilutions that she had to do. And in setting up this table, this part of the table was given, but the calculation here for the molarity of the urea in this case had to be calculated based on her stock concentration, which is what we saw on the previous page that she had calculated here, 6.99 molar. So how did she do this calculation? Let's look at it. So she has this number times this number being divided by this number. This is basically M1V1 equals M2V2. Now, there's an important thing that she's missing in here, and let's see what it is, because we know that if we just copy a formula using our little plus sign, it should work all the way through, right? Uh-oh, no dice, didn't work. So here's what happened. Because it's changed every single formula, now this center is using the wrong box, as is the next one, right? D15, not the one we want. We want it to stay the same throughout, so D13 always. So we can come in here to the D13, put a dollar sign in between the D and the 13. These correspond to the cell numbers, right? So this is the D, and this is the 13, right? That's where I'm looking at the green cell. And just press enter. Now it doesn't look like anything's changed, but look what happens when I do the plus sign. Now all of a sudden I have my concentrations back, right? Because in every single point, this thing is being held the same. Some people will also do another variation of this where they put a dollar sign in front of the D as well. This essentially does the same thing, right? So I double clicked and I got the same numbers, but it's unnecessary and I don't do more work than I have to, so I will just leave it that way. Okay, so just a couple of other things that you can do using Excel that I think are really useful. So if you want to find the average, AVR average, and again, these are going to pop up with some functions that might be used, right? So I'm going to type in average, and I'm going to start my quote, and again, it's going to tell me what kind of input it wants, number, comma, etc. And I'm going to highlight all of these. So you see how it has G13 colon G11. That's the same thing as G3, comma, G4, comma, G5, comma, G6. That's what this colon means in Excel. I'm going to end the parentheses and press enter. Now I have the average of the absorption here. If I wanted to turn that into a percentage, say, so this is the average. In this particular case, it's not a meaningful number, but these are definitely numbers that you'll use very frequently. There's another quantity called the standard deviation, and we can easily calculate that using Excel by doing the same equal sign and going STDEVA, STDEVA, and then it'll come up asking for this type of input. We're going to give it all these numbers here, and it's going to tell us again G3 through G11, and so this is our standard deviation. This is how different each number is from the average here. Now if we take this number, the standard deviation, and we divide it by the average, we can get the percent difference. This is essentially a measure of the spread of our data. How far away are each one of these points from the average? And in this case, we're looking at an increasing trend, so we don't expect this number to be very small. But in general, the smaller it is, the more the numbers here are agreeing with the average. And that's what you want when you're doing multiple trials, right? Not particularly the case here, but in a lot of cases it'll be a useful number to use. So this number here, we'll label it is the percent difference, or the deviation, percent deviation. So that's a couple of things you can do. So how do we convert this to percentage? Glad you asked. We're going to go right click again, and in this column here we're going to go down to percentage. We'll keep 2 decimal places just for fun. And now I have made this column into a percentage. So it's always going to give us in Excel numbers that are going to be decimals. It's never going to give us fractions. It's only ever going to give us decimals. You'll see if you try and put a fraction in, most of the time it will do something like this, where it's auto-formatted this to mean a date, right? Which is kind of annoying, but you'll remember you have to put this equals sign in before you can put your formula in. And even still, let's try this again. So once a formula has been put in automatically by Excel, it will automatically stay there. So you will have to go back up to this square and right click it and undo what has been done. So you can see if I put equals first and I have 1 divided by 2, I get 1/2. If I just put 1/2, I get a date. Now how would I fix that? I can right click this, and so it says custom. I don't want custom, I just want a number, right? I don't know how it came up with that number. That's very exciting. Oh, from the date, for 2000, I don't know. It's very exciting, but it's obviously not what 1/2 equals, right? This is what 1/2 equals. So just make sure that you're careful about how you use things. And if you get a number that looks weird, you have to be able to think about why it looks weird, right? And so once we've got all of our numbers nice and pretty in here, then we can make our pretty little graph, which again you can do in the body of the spreadsheet, or you can do in its own separate spreadsheet. And we can do that by right clicking here. Oh, just kidding. Right clicking here, maybe. Let's see if we can find the option up here. Anyways, the point is that you can move this to its own page if you want to by right clicking. My computer is kind of giving me a hard time right now, so I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, so that should be all the things that you need to know in order to do your spreadsheet. Remember, the cuter and more organized everything is, the easier it is for you to understand what's going on, which makes it much, much, much more likely that your answer, your information will be correct. So that's that.